My point is, it was so difficult to find lawyers who were willing to dissent in the mania, the moral panic of our time. I made so many phone calls to otherwise courageous lawyers who simply did not want to be seen, not just as taking controversial, but taking antisocial and unpolite points of view. I tell you, in March and April of 2020, it was nearly impossible to find a lawyer to stand up for civil liberties in the face of COVID mania. But one of the lawyers who did, one of the first lawyers who answered the call of the Democracy Fund to fight back, is our guest today. She's our friend, Lisa Bildy is her name, and she joins us now via Skype from London, Ontario. Lisa, great to see you.
Nice to see you too, Ezra.
It's very hard to be unfashionable. We're social creatures. We want to fit in. We want to be polite company. We don't want people to like us. We want to get invited to Christmas parties. We don't want people to look at us funny. To be a dissenter on things often means you're going to be, at best, identified with your client, but at worst called, well, just shunned from society yourself. I think it's very difficult. You were a key lawyer fighting for freedom during the lockdowns, weren't you?
Yes, I was at the Justice Center at the time, and the whole organization just got geared up to fight those restrictions. So, and I had, I guess, a taste of it before when I battled our law society as well. So, over the statement of principles. So I guess I'm used to being on the so-called wrong side of issues. And once you kind of go through that experience and live through it, you realize it doesn't kill you. And in fact, it probably makes you stronger.
Well, it certainly makes you resourceful. That's a long way of introducing you, but what I want to talk about today is one of your most recent clients, a friend of ours, Amy Hamm. She's a nurse in the Vancouver area who a few years ago did something a little bit social media influencer-y, but it wasn't a particularly heavy-duty thing. She rolled out a billboard in Vancouver that just simply said, I, and then the heart symbol, J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series. It's such an innocuous thing. I mean, there are quite scandalous billboards everywhere. This just had a message that could be interpreted as standing by J.K. Rowling's stance opposing transgender colonization of women's spaces, swimming pools, changing rooms, things like that. And she was prosecuted for 5 years. Tell us the story of Amy Hamm.
Well, it was over 4 years. She put up that billboard, and it immediately attracted the attention of activists who, of course, don't like you to be critical of anything to do with transgender ideology. And so complaints were made to her college. I guess she'd been identified by the reporter in one of the articles following the billboard as a nurse. And so that put the word out that there was a way to get at her, and that was to file complaints with her regulator. And a couple of people did do that. One of them was a self-described social justice warrior and Marxist, and he basically advised the college that they should ensure that she never works as a nurse again. The other one was anonymous. So the college took it upon themselves to do a complete investigation of pretty much everything that Amy Hamm said on social media, on podcasts, in various articles that she'd written on gender ideology. She'd become a bit of well, it's fair to say, quite a critic of gender ideology and its impact on women's rights. That was her focus. So there was a lot out there. And in fact, they pulled together a dossier of about 330 pages of things that she'd said and written online. So, not content to, I guess, shut up is maybe what was expected of her. She decided to fight it. And with the Justice Center's help, she was able to do that. And it turned into a marathon hearing. We had 22 days of hearings.
That's insane. I mean,
spread out over a year and a half.
That's more than most murder trials, to be candid.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was as stressful as one probably, too, to be in the hot seat like that. And we had people from all over the world watching this case because, of course, it's a very timely issue right now. There are a number of people around the world, especially in the UK and the United States and Canada, the Anglosphere, basically, where, women who are standing up to gender ideology are being raked over the coals and fighting legal battles. And some of them are successful and many are not. So there was a lot of interest in her case.
Yeah, 22 days of hearing is just insane. Now, let me just confirm with you something I believe to be true, that there was never a single piece of evidence adduced in these hearings that suggested that Amy was any way inappropriate in her conduct of nursing. So in her actual profession, on the job, dealing with patients, dealing with others in hospitals or clinics or other health settings, there was never any accusation that she actually harmed or discriminated or anything like that. This was purely an assessment of her external political views said on the street with a billboard and on Twitter. Is that accurate?
That's absolutely accurate. There was not a single workplace complaint, and her evidence was that she had actually dealt with transgender patients before and shown them the utmost respect. She told the story of working on the downtown east side as a younger nurse and having a transgender patient who she was quite fond of. And there was never any suggestion that she misgendered anyone. She always made it a point to use preferred pronouns. She took all courses on DEI-related things and on gender ideology or gender identity in order to ensure she was fully informed. She read from all angles, and her workplace conduct was respectful. So, this was purely off-duty conduct targeted by activists.
Now, 22 days of hearings, I've been through a lengthy process before the Human Rights Commission. That's what I'm talking about. I observed the extraordinarily long trial of Tamara Leach for mischief, which is the lowest species of crime in the book. And the phrase that comes to my mind is the process is the punishment. First of all, can you even afford a lawyer to stand with you for 22 days? Luckily, the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms assisted with that. Second of all, who's got 22 days they can take off from work, from family? And it's a stressful 22 days. It's not a vacation. You have to intensely follow the proceedings. You have to withstand cross-examination. It's not like a 22-day trial is exhausting mentally and I'm sure physically too. Even if she had been acquitted, I mean, I can't even believe a 22-day hearing about a gal's tweets and her billboard sign. How many lawyers, bureaucrats, activists, complainants do you think were on the other side? Was it one of those typical swarms? Was it like, did the other side what kind of resources did they deploy against Amy? They had 3 lawyers on it, including in-house counsel and 2 external counsel that they hired. I'm sure it wasn't cheap. They had a couple of I don't know what they paid for their experts. They did have a couple of experts as well. And it was a time-consuming affair for that organization as well. I'm sure they spent a lot of money prosecuting her for this. And the Justice Center, to its great credit, allowed her to have not 1 but 2 lawyers for most of it, bringing in Karen Bastow as another lawyer who the Justice Center put on the case. And she was able to fight and she was able to put up a strong defense. We had some excellent experts as well who were very generous with their time. And I thought they did a fantastic job on her behalf. But, it wasn't enough in this environment where we're fighting a very, very entrenched worldview that, one of the things about being one of these rebel lawyers, as you say, the hard part is that you can do the best job possible, or at least you can certainly try, and you still end up losing a lot of these cases, probably more than than the average. I joke sometimes that I walk this earth to give opposing counsel the thrill of victory, because it just feels like they're all uphill battles these days. Yeah. We have the same experience at the Democracy Fund. We were actually very successful with the tickets and the COVID, the app, the Arrive Can app. Most of those have been thrown out. But on the major so on the minor cases, we've actually been extremely successful, over 90%, I would say. But on those major strategic cases that set precedents, absolutely we lose most of the time. And I think of the case that Maxime Bernier and Brian Peckford filed about being banned from traveling on airplanes during the elections. I think of the case that we did with Kean Bexty when he flew through a airport those sort of detention where you had to stay in the hotel as a quarantine hotel and pay over $1,000. We challenged that. We lost all those strategic cases. The only strategic case that I think was won over the last half decade was challenging the Emergencies Act itself. It was a bit of a miracle that the federal court ruled that illegal. But those were about COVID matters. We're talking about Amy Hamm and transgenderism. Tell me, first of all, who were the deciders? If this was within the nursing profession, these would not have been judges. And I imagine they were not even lawyers. Were they sort of senior nurses? Who made the decision here?
So it was a panel comprised of 2 nurses, one of whom was a retired nurse, I believe, and one active, plus a member of the public. So like many of these bodies, they have lay appointments to their disciplinary bodies. And I don't know what her background was. I don't recall. But they had a lawyer who advised them along the way and very likely, helped write the decision and walked through the analysis of the charter and so on. But these are not people whose job it is to decide free speech issues. They're people who are there to decide if nurses are competent, ethical, are not, stealing drugs on the side or sexually assaulting other people. I mean, that's the normal kind of work that they would do. So it's very weird.
I went through the same thing when I was a lawyer. I mean, I'd never had a complaint from a client, not once, ever. I mean, I didn't do law for a long time, but, I had no disciplinary history at all. All the complaints against me, and there were more than 20, were about my politics. My newspaper columns, my videos would be shown to the Law Society, and they would have hearings about that. Now, I mean, in the end, none of them stuck, but it was the process that was the punishment. And I would trust a panel of a retired nurse and an active nurse if, like you say, how is the nursing? How is the scientific medical nursing? Was there an ethical question violating the privacy of a patient? Absolutely. I would trust a nurse more than I would trust a lawyer. But to weigh the freedom of Amy Hamm outside the nurses' station, who the hell do they think they are? I think it's outrageous. I know for a fact that wouldn't live a day in America under their First Amendment, but alas, in Canada, we're not as free.